Do you want to know how hard it was for me to get a seat to watch the latest Spider-Man movie? Let me tell you. During the last couple of days, I struggled to find at least a good seat for various reasons because, well, for starters, I wanted to watch the movie early because I had a certain appointment to do on the usual Tuesday or Wednesday when the movie tickets are cheaper. But unfortunately, well, I was browsing on AMC and Regal theaters to see how the seats are. Full house, really packed, almost no seats, and I mean that literally. Even when they put like 10 or 12 screenings per day, I'm probably exaggerating. They still managed to be a full house. I mean, and in a way, I'm not surprised that even while I'm talking this new Spider-Man movie, Brand New Day, has amassed really millions of dollars and it's become really successful. As far from what I had heard, it even surpassed Endgame in box office. I don't know if this is with the same calculation with inflation and all this stuff, but either way, big success of Spider-Man, and I'm not surprised because well, Spider-Man is very, very popular. He's a very popular IP that you can make the worst Spider-Man movie ever, the most garbage of them all. You can make the most awful of them all, and it's still gonna make money. And I'm not surprised because it's very popular, and very popular IP they tend to do that. But the point is that it took me a while to get a seat, and this is the reason why I am this late on making a vlog, because I just watched it 2 days ago on that day that I wanted to do. That was kind of like the best opening I had on to watch it. Don't worry, on some of the stuff that I wanted to do, I did manage. I was even lucky to even find $5 on the street. Talk about luck. And since this is gonna be, the typical Marvel movie review, you know me that I usually have struggled on making kind of like the typical proper review that I do because. Well, for starters, not many all into the continuity of how it goes, and there are certain aspects that it will be a little bit spoilery that it's gonna be hard to hide. But you know what? At this point, I'm gonna try my best to not be too spoilery, but I'm gonna spoil some stuff that there's gonna be. But at the end of the day, you know me that I am that. I for the most part, I like most of the current Spider-Man movies, although I'm not exactly a big fan of the across the Spider-Verse movies because I'm not exactly kind of like the biggest fan of Miles Morales, I'll say, but I was totally fine with the Tom Holland movies. Ever since he started, and I do remember that it took me a while to get used to the changes or the creative liberties that they use with the IP in order to fit on the Marvel universe. And even though the Spider-Man is on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's still being owned by Sony. It's really, really, really complicated, and it's kind of like a mess when it's about the rights and all this stuff. But I'm not gonna get too much into that. But honestly, if you know me, I'm the kind of guy who was not exactly very well receptive on post Endgame Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of thing, because it feels like this is kind of like an era that is gone and now it's kind of like struggling, and most of the time it's a lot of misses. It has a lot of it really brought up a lot of garbage movies because, for example, Black Widow. I don't like Thunderbolts. Also, I'm one of the few ones who didn't like the Thunderbolts. The Marvels was also very disaster and all this stuff. I had a little bit of a pattern with Thor Love and Thunder, but it's diminishing every time I think about it. But the curious thing is that for very, very awful Marvel movie that they brought up, and every awful Marvel decision that they do. I mean, I don't even watch the TV shows and all this stuff. For every Marvel all garbage that they brought up, ironically, Spider-Man stuff are the ones that are more successful and also pretty good. I mean, we had it with what was it with No Way Home? No Way Home, which was really successful, and that is a post Endgame movie. And but because of that, this is why I had a little bit of kind of like a careful skepticism, Brand New Day. And that is until I watched the movie, and I'm rightfully gonna say that it still applies that for every garbage Marvel movie we get, Spider-Man still holds up, and that was, and I'm not gonna lie, I just came out really enjoying this film, and it was a feeling that I didn't get for a long time from a Marvel movie, and it had to be our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And you know what? The funny thing is that considering the events from the last movie and this movie, this one kind of touches upon kind of like rebuilding the wheel of probably one of the worst Spider-Man stories that there is, which is none other than the One More Day comic storyline. I'm not exactly 100% familiar with it, but I did read One More Day, and it's as depressing and lowbrow as it is, then I can understand why people really, really despise it. But still, they try to incorporate it. They try to incorporate it into canon. So it's almost like we had One More Day. It stayed there. And it stayed for the eternity. You'll never forget it. It's basically like the Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, in which is an awful game, and everyone wants to forget it. And I kind of wish there could be a way to sweep that in, to erase it from eternity. But Sega developers are like, no, we won't. It's still canon, because if it wasn't for that, you're not gonna get Silver the Hedgehog. Honestly, they should find a way to even erase Silver. I don't hate the guy, so don't worry about it. I don't hate the guy, but unfortunately, if we had to erase Silver in order to erase Soliana and Sonic 2006, that's a sacrifice that we should make. Sorry, Silver. I'm sorry. I know I like you, but unfortunately, that game is such awful that I think it's for the best to erase it from existence and from canon. I would say that's basically the same thing that people might be thinking with One More Day with Spider-Man. How in the world did I deviate from talking about Spider-Man and when I'm supposed to, and I deviate to talk about Sonic, and I'm supposed to be talking about Spider-Man. But anyway, I did like it, and it did play some good things. Although there are, of course, some nagging things that it should be told. It's not necessarily ruin the movie, but there's some parts that you might say that, okay, it's not that kind of like exactly good, I'll say, but it's close enough, I'd say. But I will indeed say that this is probably one of the better Spider-Man movies that there is. So, if you remember, after the events of No Way Home, in order to protect the the multiverse kind of thing that was that was going down and all this stuff, Peter had to make kind of like the ultimate sacrifice in which he had to make almost everyone forget about him, even his best friend Ned and his love interest and MJ. By the way, not Mary Jane Watson, it's Michelle Jones, if you kind of remember. So pretty much, Peter is living his life, as Spider-Man, but also kind of getting a little bit lonely. He even have to battle, his enemies like Scorpion and Tombstone, which they just show up from somewhere, and that is until he stumbles with a new enemy in which basically is someone who can mind jack other people and jumps from one mind from another person to another. And while Spider-Man thinks for his heightened senses, he's kind of immune to it. So he's trying to investigate what this enemy wants, because it wants something from what was it from this organization that what was it that protects people? I forget the name of that organization, domestic security or something like that. In which they even hire ninjas from the I don't remember what was it called, Red Hood. It's these kind of ninjas that I think if show up in Shang-Chi, but I despise that. I didn't like that movie also. That I just erased it from my mind also. But not only he has to battle that enemy, he also has his internal problem where he's feeling, homesick. He's missing his best friend and his love interest that forgot about him because of the events, and he wants to reconnect with them, but he doesn't have the kind of like the proper words to do it, and all that stress. Basically, it increases the hormones of his spider DNA, which makes his power go. It gets an evolution that it goes. Let's say that it becomes overly powerful. His senses become heightened. He's just much stronger, and of course, now he can shoot webs from his wrist instead of using his gadgets. But unfortunately, for starters, he's not used to it, and it puts a toll on his body, so he can't control his powers, or even he has a mode where he goes onto berserk mode, and of course that obviously makes him gives him problems on solving the mystery of the villain who is jumping around and then taunting him about the things that he lost and he can't get over of his loss and all this stuff. That's basically kind of like the basic premise without spoiling too much, but I will get a little bit on the stuff that eventually. I will talk a little bit more about some of the characters and also the actors, because it's of course there is no mystery that Tom Holland did really fit the role as Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and he does his job well. And honestly, his role here is even more entertaining than what he did on The Odyssey. Mind you, I didn't hate The Odyssey from if you saw my vlog out of it, but it comes kind of like one of those times in which the more you think about it, you might think that it wasn't that good. But I mean, it's good over its execution, but it's not exactly high art, something like that. The Tom Holland was actually my least of my problems on The Odyssey. And I think that he did fit the role with as Peter Parker. His acting is Peter Parker, and it fits. Yeah, he does well on the job. I do also still think that despite the little appearances that he has in this movie, Jacob Batalon, who plays Ned, is still at the he's still lovable, kind of like the lovable kid who hangs out with his best friend and all this stuff. He looks like a fun kid. I mean, I like him since ever since the first movie that he appeared. So and his friendship is still there. There's even kind of like a nice scene in which he and Spider-Man, they begin to bond, and it's so relaxing that is good. A little have to say also mostly it with Zendaya. Zendaya, she's the girl that is appearing, everywhere. People say that she's kind of like a great actress, but well, I don't particularly dislike her as an actress, and also as this version of MJ. I got used to it, but I will say that Zendaya is still Zendaya, and this kind of showcases most of her weaknesses as an actress, because she is still very bland, I'll say. And in the Odyssey is also she like I said, she does show a lot of her weaknesses. That she's a very, very, very bland and sometimes emotionless kind of actress. She doesn't have kind of like this range of emotions that kind of make her kind of like boring. Although in the case of this movie, it's not exactly her acting that kind of makes her a little bit more tolerable. It's more how the character was written. And I'm pretty sure we're gonna see a lot of more of her and Tom Holland together, because, well, I don't know if I have to 100% confirm, but she and Tom Holland are now married. I think they married in secret. And it's funny that I saw them both on the Odyssey, and now I see them kind of like over there. Yeah, and considering that, and now, what was? It's kind of funny that it's almost the Spider-Man movies that bring couples together. I mean, that's the same thing that kind of happened with Andrew Garfield and what was the other? I forget. It kind of like the actress who played Gwen Stacy. And they're kind of like lovey-dovey, and they were a little bit too romantically involved, both in movies and the Spider-Man movies, the most noticeably. Although in this one, actually they kind of hold a little bit their distance because of the circumstances that are happening, and it touched upon a little bit kind of like with maturity, which I can appreciate it. Oh, there's these are kind of like the main trio of the Spider-Man movie. But of course, that with every Spider-Man movie, we got, of course, kind of like the supporting cast. And this one, in this case, on the Spider-Man movies, they try to bring kind of like the other Marvel characters just to bring the excuse to say, hey, we're still in the cinematic universe, and now since Disney bought Sony 20th Century Fox, no, 30th Century, 35, whatever Century Fox that it is, it still kind of gives them an excuse to put them in one way or another. The biggest one that they promote and they show is having Mark Ruffalo in it, the Hulk. And I gotta say that they finally, it's a breath of fresh air that they brought up the violent, angry Hulk that we had on the previous Marvel Cinematic Universe thing. Because honestly, I wasn't kind of like 100% keen on kind of having this intelligent Hulk, the Hulk that talks, and and he's just there being kind of like intellectual, but still having the hulking body here and there. That is honestly that is kind of boring. And of course, the less we talk about She-Hulk, the better. Never saw it, but I know what it is, and I saw that insulting moment, and so let's forget about that. She-Hulk existed. Uh, uh, but of course, they have. He appears, in some key moment, like for example, when he talks with Peter Parker about how he has to repress his gamma radiation, and he's trying to live, a normal life as a professor, but unfortunately, that he has to still live his life as the Hulk, and we have a very, very engaging action scene between Spider-Man and the Hulk. And by the way, he's not the only Marvel character that they brought up. They also brought John Bernthal as the Punisher. He's the Punisher from the TV series that I haven't seen, but I know the reputation. I've seen clips of it, and it can get violent. And, well, of course that in order to make it a little bit more mainstream, they tone him down a little bit. That is a little bit of a nitpick that I do have, although it is a nitpick that is kind of understandable, because the Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, is one of the most violent of the Marvel heroes, or anti-hero that you want to call him. He's basically an angry guy who he's there to punish criminals by killing them, and sometimes in more very, very horrific ways. Although it does fit, when he is with Spider-Man, because if memory serves me right, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that the Punisher first appearances was during in the Spider-Man comics until he became his own man. And the funny thing is that his interaction with Spider-Man in this movie is actually very entertaining. I really like the chemistry that they both have, in which both they have opposing ideas of justice. Although there's also kind of like a sense that they butt heads, but at the same time they respect each other. They all know about each other, or they don't want to know about each other, but at the same time both of them have each other's back. Although they do have kind of like a noodle incident that they say that they meet in Staten Island, but this thing is never addressed. It never addressed how they met in Staten Island. But still, John Bernthal, he did a great job playing the Punisher, even though they Disneyfy him a little bit for the sake of all these things that are coming. We also have the cameo of Florence Pugh, Yelena, the adopted sister of Black Widow, and she's still there doing her really, really phony, fake Russian accent. And you know me that I was not a fan of Thunderbolt. I didn't like Thunderbolt. I refuse to call it New Avengers because they don't deserve that. And she's no Black Widow, and her Russian accent and the way she acts, and don't get me wrong, I don't dislike her. I know that I mean she did wonderful Midsummer, but her Russian accent and the way she acts is so fake that I even struggle to think that she's Russian. She's a caricature of a Russian. I'm sorry. It's her accent but that somehow kind of makes me raise my eyebrows somehow. There's some. I can't say much about Scorpion because he's only there kind of like for a moment. Although we did kind of have kind of like small cameos of other villains that we don't know where did they pull up. We got Tombstone for a while, but he only there for like 2 minutes or a minute of the movie. And we even have kind of like a 15 seconds of someone who looks like Rhino. But here comes a little bit on the spoilerish territory because I think that everybody is knowing it right now, and that is of course, the villain. And the villain is probably one of the most controversial things that, understandably controversial. The villain is basically someone who can mind jump into other people and control them at almost every single move and read their minds and all this stuff. And then, of course, then he can do it into a certain distance, and then it jumps into another person. Well, here's the big surprise for those who doesn't know about Prepare Yourself. The main villain is Jean Grey. Jean Grey. Oh, the assistant of Professor X from the X-Men movies. Yep, one of the X-Men is a villain. And then one of the good guys. Well, good guys unless it gets possessed by the Phoenix. But, and of course she's one of the most powerful. She's basically, if you know the X-Men lore, she's kind of like the right hand of Professor X. She has telekinesis powers, almost as close as him. And also, and she's basically the girlfriend of Cyclops, Scott Summer. And also she has a little bit of a kind of like this romantic tension with Wolverine. But in this case, they made her an angry teenager who is basically taunting Spiderman, possessing people, but at the same time, she's basically looking for her sister. But in this case, she's causing a lot of harm on this on this organization. Damage control. Now I remember, it was called damage control. It's causing trouble in damage control because she thinks that they're hiding something and all these things. So, well, I wasn't exactly, angry about it. I didn't care because, if you remember over the course of a lot of the X-Men movies, they all had their ways to give their own creative liberties, even as controversial as it is. And when it's about Marvel, I can understand that. I mean, sometimes they have to back down in order to retract it. I mean, look at what they do to Taskmaster. They made an awful job with Taskmaster. Total miscast, total insult to Taskmaster. But okay, you have to remember, as much as I didn't like Thunderbolts, the biggest applause I can give it to Thunderbolts is how they kill off Taskmaster, because F that shit. Oh my god, I'm not exactly the kind of guy who drop S or F bombs. I hope they kind of do that with Miss Marvel. I'm sorry, but I don't like Miss Marvel. She's a scrappy dude of the Marvel franchise. But in a way, I wasn't very bothered how they portrayed Jean Grey, as this villain and all this stuff. And although I did saw a reviewer having this interesting debate saying that how this character is portrayed kind of like morally gray. Although I do kind of agree that how can you make kind of like this morally gray character when this character has a little bit of a sadistic streak, and no matter their intentions or what they do or whatever, it's still a character that basically robs the will of other people, and it showcases that she was a little bit irresponsible with her powers. And, well, there's also the fact that she managed to have one guy get run over by a car. No, I'm seriously. They run up. They have a guy that they get run over while mind controlling, and then it's been forgotten. And just when the movie wants to make itself emotional, there are some people. It took a while, or someone who had a better memory, to remind me and saying, Hey, what about that guy with the, what about that guy that she makes him run over by a car? You tell me. I don't know much about it. Oh well, but okay. Again, I'm not gonna say much about the special effects because it's typical Spider-Man thing because it's one of the better special effects, and I like what I like about the Spider-Man movie compared to the other Marvel movies is that it doesn't have this grayish tone or dark tone that is depressing. I'm going back with Thunderbolts and kind of like proving my point why I didn't like Thunderbolts about how depressing that movie was on how that the tones are getting darker and it gets boring. And this one doesn't. It's a little bit kind of like more upbeat, I'll say, and even and also it takes its time, to breathe. Sometimes it doesn't even abuse the Marvel humor that they constantly overdo for the most part. It mostly left, here and there, but it's mostly whatever Spider-Man and the Punisher bigger or something like that. As for the growth of Spider-Man, which is me tackling a little bit of the theme, it's really actually well done, in which it showcases kind of like the maturity of Spider-Man, and it kind of mirrors or somehow makes Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 better, because both of them, they have, both of them are movies that have this theme about growing up, or your spider powers get canceled or get overpowered because of hormones and maturity and all this stuff, and Peter Parker in both versions had to find a way, to control those moments or get back those powers. Although in this one does it better because Peter Parker, well, he struggles. He's trying to adapt to his loneliness, but somehow we as human beings, we are social creatures, and in the case of him, he remembers almost everything, and the other character, they basically, it's not exactly that they don't remember him, but because there are snippets that they do remember him, but of course because of the spell that happened from the last movie, but unfortunately it was like trying to pick the correct words in order to bring them back to their own life it's hard. It's hard. It's almost like, going to a stranger and the stranger doesn't technically remember you, and it's like, and things gets kind of like awkward, and thankfully it doesn't get overly awkward, and it kind of comes to a point that it gets kind of like heartbreaking, but at the same time is also, they also take kind of like the mature approach. Like, for example, it's like, hey, I think we can't be, like this because I don't have kind of like that feeling anymore. But you know what? I'm still gonna be on your side, and we can build, and you can build other things, from the start. And that goes, and of course that they wanted to showcase that this reflects both Peter Parker and Jean Grey. Jean Grey has it's kind of like this opposite kind of character. Even if there's kind of like a nitpick that I will say about this movie is that Jean Grey kind of, after the things that she has done, and well, it is understandable why she was doing it. She still caused kind of like collateral damage and still doesn't own up on the things that she has done. But at least I will say that the talk with Spider-Man, with Spider-Man, did kind of work. Although you had to go through, of course, with the talk no jutsu kind of thing, because, well, they can't make Jean Grey overly evil because she is part of the X-Men, I'll say. although of course that leads up with I would say kind of like a I would say a kind of like a bright conclusion. I'll say with Spider-Man with the bond between Spider-Man and the Punisher, and then of course I like the kind of like the bond that they build when it tries to rebuild between Peter Parker and Ned. That was kind of like cute. And you know what? The funny thing is that during the whole movie, almost everyone was well behaved. That is until the post-credit scene. The post-credit scene they wanted to play out because Ned on his mind that he remembers something about Spider-Man or something like that. He tries to to pinpoint where he is and all this stuff. So he even built a Spider-Man locator and all this stuff. So they play out with this, and the post-credit scene happened in which they find Spider-Man, but not on Earth, but somewhere far, 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 far away. And a lot of people, they kind of like, they were like, yay, or something like that. When I was realizing what it was, I just wanted to drop an F-bomb. Because 2 words. Miles Morales. I already say I'm not too keen about Miles Morales. Again, I don't hate the guy, but I do have a little bit of kind of like an issue with Miles Morales. Although it could be 2 things. It could be Miles Morales in live action, and they're going to try to say that the next movie is going to be Miles Morales. Or it is teasing the upcoming Spider-Verse movie that is still working. How many years has it been? I think about 4 years ever since that. Although the way it took too long, I get it because the Spider-Verse movies, as much as I am kind of like on a pedestal story-wise, I'm not gonna deny that they have amazing, no pun intended, amazing visual. Although because of my age, I think that it kind of a little bit hurts my eyes in a way. But I do respect the ambition that the Spider-Verse movie that it had. But yeah, that's kind of like the post-credit scenes that I do have. But of course. But at the meantime, Spider-Man Brand New Day was a fresher breath, new. How can okay, I was struggling to find the correct word. I really like it. It's one of the better Spider-Man movies that I have seen. I could probably put it this as one of my top 10 best movies of the year out, if I think truthfully or not. It's funny how most of the Sony movies are the ones that they nail the movies better than the Marvel movies. The same kind of thing happened with the Deadpool and Wolverine. It's mostly the Sony movies that have kind of like a little bit better reception than the other Marvel movies. That is, of course, until it is the X-Men, because I did saw the trailer of the upcoming Doomsday movie that is coming in this year, and unfortunately, I felt like, I don't know, almost nothing. I'll say it feels bloated. That's the thing I have to say. It feels bloated with a lot of character, and of course they are trying a little bit too hard to incorporate the X-Men. Now we have here with Jean Grey, and it's kind of like a younger Jean Grey, in which I don't know how they're gonna make fit with if you wanted to build the X-Men on there, but so honestly, this is kind of like the Jean Grey, whether you like it or not, it's still kind of kind of raise some eyebrows about how they're gonna build something. But at the end of the day, every Spider Sense will tell you that you're gonna have a fun time with your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man in a brand new day.